Yeah. So I'm just thinking, back then, 10 years ago, $10 oil, you wouldn't have too much trouble lending to companies to trade or even to speculate.
Yeah.
But at $140, $120, you're going to be more cautious.
No, it's a question. I mean, I think with the increased volatility in the market, banks like ourselves are increasingly looking also at the risk management capabilities of companies, and whether they are managing the risk, the value at risk, how is it daily monitored, and what the effects are of that. I think that's become a much more important issue, not only the high prices but also the increased volatility.
Yeah. Another interesting aspect of the current crisis is this: the banks themselves are in trouble. The big banks. 10 years ago, it was when the big banks themselves, some of the Wall Street banks, were active in the oil trading aspects. They did a lot of oil trading. They were lending money as well as they operated oil desks. But today, as I hear from some of my contacts, some of the oil companies themselves are very uneasy trading with some of the Wall Street banks. So tell me about how you would be involved in any of these trades.
From that perspective, I can understand that everybody has a concern for counterparties. And of course, with some of the big players in the energy market, I mean, if you talk about prop trading businesses that some of the financial institutions have done and the increased volatility, there are concerns about that. I think the Fortis business has always been focused more on customer business. And of course, we are aware that the counterparties look at counterparty risk. They look at your rating, and as such, the Fortis rating is a strong rating, and I think that gives confidence to our customers. But for smaller players, that is of course much more an issue today than it was before.
Have you had to cut financing to clients from the past of late?
I think basically, the bank's business and what I've seen today specifically on the ECT side, we've still been very much on a growth mode during
ECT would refer to
is the energy, commodities and transportation business, which is one of the cornerstones of the merchant banking business in Asia, and that's certainly been in a growth mode. But you could argue the business opportunities out there were larger than the growth that we were allowed, and that was a result of the very high commodity prices, as well as, if you look the same as on shipping, you've seen the prices of vessels going up, the whole ship market has increased substantially. So we've all seen a lot of increases in the assets in that market, which have increased more sharply than the growth rate in which we were able to grow our business. So that means that you basically rationalize your business and look at those players where you think the future is, and those are the ones we tend to invest with.
So
I hope that's...
The answer is yes then.
The answer is yes, and I think so far we are looking at a very good result in our business book for 2008.
Okay. Let's look beyond this crisis, which is going to be very hard to do. What is going to lie beyond this crisis if you had to speculate about the future?
Well, I think speculate is always different. I mean, probably had we gone back last year, say June, would anyone have predicted the downturn that we're facing now with regard to the subprime and the credit crunch? Well, actually, it was one person who did predict it. It was Warren Buffett. But probably we didn't predict this, how severe this would be, and that banks wouldn't trust each other for a while. And the question is, of course, what is the consumer sentiment in the US going to do now that it's knocking on to credit cards? And I think that's an important issue. I think the difference with a couple of years ago is, of course, that you have a much stronger Asian base than before. So we're not completely dependent only on the US or the European economy. So looking towards the future, I think generally speaking, a turn down in the US market doesn't take more than 2 to 3 semesters, whereby you have a stabilization and return to growth. So from that perspective, I think I'm optimistic. And if you look at the Asian equation, I think it's the large population growth that you have in China still, in India, the changing diets, the per capita consumption on most commodities being still relatively low to what you see in the US and in Europe. I think there's absolutely growth, and I would not be coming to Asia and looking at building these opportunities for Fortis if we were thinking we're going to go into a deep crisis. So I think it's certainly different than in '98, but even if you go back to '98, it didn't take too long to get out of that as well.
Well, I think in '98 the difference is that effectively there were only 4 countries that were in deep trouble. It was Indonesia, Thailand, Korea, and Malaysia.
Yeah.
Those are the 4. But anyway, China, you were one of the pioneers to set up the Fortis activities in China, in Shanghai. I recall that interview 10 years ago. A quick update on the progress in China.
Well, I think China is of course where Fortis has made a lot of progress. We now have the Shanghai branch, we have Guangzhou branch. We're looking at potentially further expansion in Beijing. On the insurance side, the Fortis business has grown significantly. We have, of course, now Ping Ao as a very important investor in Fortis. So yes, I think the relationship and the growth potential in China has only increased. There are restrictions still. They don't change as quickly as we wish, like in the renminbi quotas, because there's really quite a lot of opportunities for business. But in some ways we are still curtailed in the growth potential from a regulatory point of view rather than from what we would like to do there.
Okay. Final question is this. Now you've just stepped foot in Singapore for about a week in your new position. What are the goals that you hope to achieve in this second part of your career now?
Well, I mean, it's the scope of what I'll be looking here from Singapore is of course the total Asian market from the Fortis Merchant Bank point of view. So it's primarily the growth of our asset-based lending activities, our investment banking activities, as well as our corporate and commercial banking activities. And with the growth of Asia, I mean, that's the aim to grow that further. We've recently expanded in Japan, Australia, I mentioned to you before. We have Dubai, which is on the map for the end of the beginning fourth quarter this year. So the footprint, further expansion in China. So our footprint in Asia is absolutely growing, and I think that's very exciting.
You mentioned Dubai earlier taking on a lot of business in that area, that Central Asia as well as the Middle East.
Correct.
So it's like the whole chain, right? Not just energy.
Well, we initially started Dubai as a rep office, and that is being upgraded to a full branch, and we'll be adding in our other banking activities. And basically also because the Gulf region has grown tremendously. Basically there again we are following customers who have moved into that area and then adding on new customers in that area that in fact have expanded their business footprint to areas like Singapore. So in that sense we're becoming very complementary in what we're able to offer to them.
You didn't mention anything about India.
India is also an area where we as Fortis have expanded, particularly on the insurance and the private banking side. We're looking at as well that on the banking side, and some of that is also related to the acquisition that Fortis did last year of the ABN AMRO activities. So we're taking on board the private banking, asset management. We're taking on board for Asia. We've also taken on board, which also has a footprint in India, the diamond and jewellery business that used to be part of ABN AMRO. And Dubai is also for us a springboard into that market.
On that note, Paul, thanks for this interview.
Okay, it's a pleasure.
Let me have a chat then.